Hey, it's another edition of Sports Insider. He's Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Labbe. Again, a packed show for you today. We're going to lead it off with the Browns. Mary Kay Cabot will join us. Then we're going to talk Ohio State. Bill Landis, I think, will make his first ever appearance on Sports Insider today. We'll talk some Ohio State football, maybe some Cardale Jones, and then Joe Vardon. We'll talk Cavs. Lots to talk about on the Cavs and LeBron front. That'll come up at about 11:50. But as promised, let's get started with the Browns and their offensive coordinator search. Joining us is our Browns beat reporter, Mary Kay Cabot. Mary Kay, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing?
We're doing well. The Browns still looking for an offensive coordinator. A lot of names out there. Where are we at right now in this search?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about this. I mean, as we looked to this offseason, you just didn't think that you were going to be involved in a coaching search of any kind again. I thought there was going to be stability and that they were going to move forward. But here we are back at not complete square one, but trying to overhaul the offense. So where this stands right now is they're in the process of interviewing guys. They interviewed Mark Trestman yesterday. They've interviewed Chan Gailey, but he is expected to join Todd Bowles. They've got John DeFilippo coming in tomorrow. He's a Youngstown native, kind of a young rising star in the league. And there's a number of other guys. Bill Callahan is a strong candidate right now he's with the Dallas Cowboys. Most of these guys have a history with Mike Pettin. They've worked with him before. They know how he likes to do things. A lot of them worked with him under his mentor, Rex Ryan. So they kind of all come from the same football family, or a lot of them do. And I do think that that's probably important right now, given what happened with Kyle Shanahan. I think Mike Pettin would like to have somebody running his offense that he really has a comfort level with.
Mary Kay, it doesn't necessarily mean that the Browns can get this particular person, but do you believe they have somebody at the top of the list, somebody that has separated themselves from the rest?
Well, I would think that Mike would probably want Bill Callahan just because of the experience factor and, again, the familiarity that he has with him. I would think that would be the case. But, then you do look at a Mark Trestman, and he's one of the best offensive minds in football. Now, with Mark Trestman, I do think, however, that that his scheme would be rather complicated, and I do think that it would be difficult for Johnny Manziel to excel in it, at least right away. I think it would be a big learning curve for a number of the guys. Again, Johnny came from a simple system in college and never really had much of a playbook that he had to deal with. And, you're just talking about somebody who hasn't shown the willingness or the commitment to, study his brains out on something. So I'm not sure that would be a good fit if you're going to try to go with Johnny Manziel. But, those are all things that will need to be discussed. The other thing that could be attractive would be Al Saunders and John DeFilippo together. Mm-hmm. Then you've got sort of the senior, elder statesman, voice of reason, experienced guy with the rising young star. And that could be a good combo there too.
Mary Kay, you mentioned Johnny Manziel. Should the Browns go into this coordinator search thinking, hey, maybe we should try and find somebody that can help Johnny Manziel become an NFL caliber quarterback, or should they look at this and say, we're just going to do an independent search, we're going to focus on the offensive coordinator because we have no clue what's going to happen at quarterback anyway?
I think choice B, the latter, is the way that you should go, because, these guys have already admitted that they don't know that Johnny's going to be able to cut it. So I don't think you should choose your coordinator based around Johnny Manziel. I think that you should choose the best coordinator that you can find, and a good one will be able to work with all different kinds of quarterbacks. But you should go with the scheme that you value. You should go with the person that you really like, and then you worry about the quarterback situation after that. Don't try to fit the coordinator to Johnny Manziel.
Mary Kay, is it actually possible, though, to separate that? Because any guy who comes in and looks at this job is going to know that Johnny Manziel's there. He's going to know that maybe there was some friction between the front office and the coaching staff over Manziel. Is it really possible to separate that?
Well, you can't separate the two things. It has to be a major part of the discussion. I mean, the interview will include a big chunk of Johnny Manziel talk, because the Browns also want to find out, what do these coordinators think about Johnny Manziel? I mean, how many times have we heard Mike Pettin say that he has to rely on the offensive experts, and he doesn't profess to be a quarterback expert? So you're looking at, a head coach who wants to hear what his coordinator thinks about the quarterback. So it is a huge part of it, and it can't be separated. But I don't think that they should go into it saying, Johnny Manziel is our man, and you have to try to work with him, because I think that might scare off a lot of guys. I think they should be open-minded, and I'm sure they are open-minded enough to listen to what these coordinators, especially the long-time quarterback gurus, the guys that really know a quarterback, are telling them about Johnny Manziel.
Mary Kay, do you think there's a timetable on when they want to complete this search by?
Well, I would think that they'd have it probably wrapped up possibly by the end of next week. They're going to interview at least one of the candidates at the Senior Bowl next week in Anthony Lynn. So if they hold the job open until then, then I think they'd like to have something wrapped up soon thereafter, because, look, you're starting to get into the college, the draft and all that kind of stuff. I mean, you're really starting to look in earnest at the quarterbacks in the draft, and you need somebody on board that can get that rolling and be part of that process. And also, you need to start implementing your scheme and figuring out where you're going to go with your offense here.
Mary Kay, it's not just offensive coordinator that this team has to deal with in the offseason. They've also got Josh Gordon, what they want to do with him. Ultimately, they may decide to make a decision on Johnny Manziel, whether they want to keep him or let him go. How long could some of those issues play out? Are we talking through the draft? Could it go beyond the draft? How long could this take?
Well, it could go beyond the draft too. I mean, a lot will happen. Some things I'm sure could happen on draft day. Some things could happen, right after that. You've got the free agency period, and you'll have all those kinds of things, that will factor in. So I would think that by right around the draft, you'll have a better idea of who's going to be here and who's not.
Mary Kay, in your opinion, is it important for the Browns to get an offensive coordinator that has called plays before in the NFL?
Well, it depends on how you set it up.
Okay.
You need to have somebody on the staff that has done that. Now, if you decide that you're going to make John DeFilippo your offensive coordinator and Al Saunders your senior offensive assistant, I think you could do it that way. But I wouldn't go with no one on the staff that has called plays. I mean, you can't do that. You have to have someone on the staff that has been an offensive coordinator and that has called the plays and has been in the heat of the moment, plenty of times.
Mary Kay, when you look at the names they're looking at, obviously the NFL offensively, in some ways, is changing a lot. Most of these names are guys, kind of old school guys. Mark Trestman, I guess, is thought of as a little bit of an innovator, but there's no Chip Kelly style guys in the mix or anything like that who push tempos and are really thought of as offensive innovators. Should the Browns be looking at guys like that?
Well, I kind of do think that they should be looking at some guys like that, actually. In some ways it's the wave of the future, and then you look at, Marcus Mariota, a lot of people are talking about him being, the second best quarterback in the draft, of course, depending on what happens by midnight tonight. And so, the Browns might end up one way or the other with a dual threat quarterback, and therefore, you would want someone that, can work with those kind of guys and be creative and do all those kind of things. But again, I think the best coordinators in the NFL can adapt to those types of situations and be fluid that way. They can study up. I mean, Rob Chizzinski, when he had Cam Newton as a rookie, he went back and he worked with his college coaches and he had Cam working with people, and he became that kind of coach for Cam. So I think the best ones can do it.
Mary Kay, do you believe that quarterback is in the conversation in the first round?
Sure, yeah, I do think it's in the conversation for the first round. It has to be. You have got the number 12 pick and the number 19 pick, and I think it has to be a very huge topic of discussion for the first round.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, joining us on Sports Insider. Thanks as always for the time, Mary Kay.
Thank you, guys.
All right, so Mary Kay Cabot, offensive coordinator. Hey, why not? We need a little adversity in the offseason, right? For the Browns, it just wouldn't be a January without it. Are you impressed with any of the names? Are there any of the names for offensive coordinator out there that make you think, yeah, I want that guy?
Yeah, one guy, Mark Trestman.
Yeah.
Do I think they can get him? No. And I think that's the thing that the Browns are fighting this entire offseason, Dan. I think they're going to fight their own reputation.
Yep.
And I think Mark Trestman is going to look at the situation and say, okay, that team wants me, that team wants me, that team wants me, that team wants me. I have the choice here. I don't have to settle for the Cleveland Browns. I can take a better job. And I think Mark Trestman's going to say, why did it not work with Kyle Shanahan? Why did he want out after 1 year? The other options, Dan, come on. When I think offense, I don't think the Raiders. And the Browns have 2 guys on their list for offensive coordinator from the Oakland Raiders. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, you have to think about is, look, if Mike Pettin goes 6-10 or 7-9 again
Right.
next year, what's going to happen with him?
Yeah.
A lot of instability in that situation. Let's talk about another football team, this one coming off of a national championship, the Ohio State Buckeyes, of course, and we are joined by part of our Buckeyes team, Bill Landis. Bill, welcome aboard.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Well, how's your JT Barrett road trip treating you?
Pretty good so far. No complaints. We had a great time. Wichita Falls, JT's hometown yesterday, and we're still making our way around Texas now.
All right, Bill, Cardale Jones, he's the big topic of discussion. He's got to decide, does he want to go pro or does he want to come back? What do you think is going to happen today?
You know, I think he's going to go pro. I don't really see I think that's the best avenue for him. If you look at the quarterback situation, obviously they're going to have 3 guys coming back next year. Mm-hmm. I think Urban Meyer would be hard-pressed to play Cardale over Braxton or J.T. Barrett. And Cardale, his stock's never going to be higher. He just won the Big Ten championship, the Sugar Bowl, and the national championship. And people in the NFL take notice of things like that, so I think you need to strike while the iron's hot.
Bill, you mentioned that if Cardale goes back to Ohio State, you don't necessarily know what would happen with the quarterback situation. Maybe it would be Cardale as the starter, maybe it would be JT, maybe it would be Braxton Miller. Why do you think it's not just a given that Cardale goes back, the guy who won the Big Ten championship, the guy that took down SEC Power Alabama, and the guy that won the national championship slides right into that role?
You know, I don't want to take anything away from Cardale Jones.
Okay.
He played great in those 3 games, the 3 biggest games of the year, the first 3 starts of his career. But I don't consider myself a quarterback expert by any stretch. But I think if you were to watch Braxton play, watch JT play, and watch Cardale play, I think anyone who's a quarterback evaluator would tell you that Cardale is probably the 3rd option on that list.
You know, it's funny, Bill. I think people in some ways have forgotten kind of what J.T. Barrett actually did this year. This was a guy that was in the running for a Heisman Trophy, replacing another guy who would have been in the running for a Heisman Trophy. He set Big Ten records, got Player of the Week awards. His season was pretty incredible, and all it took was 3 games from Cardale Jones to kind of forget all that.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess it's the flavor of the week type thing, and it's really easy to forget about the guy who got you there when you're winning big games. But we were down in Wichita Falls, and they certainly didn't forget about it. They were, a lot of people we spoke to there were pretty upset that JT didn't kind of get to finish out what he started. I'm not sure if the Ohio State fan base feels that way, but the people in JT's hometown certainly do.
Bill, the people that you talked to about J.T. Barrett, were they at all surprised that he was able to do the things that he did? Because I know I was surprised he was able to do the things that he did in taking over for Braxton Miller. A lot of people felt like when Braxton went down with his injury that Ohio State's season ended right there.
Yeah, I don't know if they were surprised. They saw JT play in high school, and he grew up in a typical Texas town that loves its high school football, and he was a star quarterback, so they all expected he would do well. Maybe not quite so soon. I spoke with his neighbors a bit yesterday, and they said that they thought he would play. They just weren't quite sure when. And I think when he stepped in this year and played so well, maybe it caught them off guard a little bit, but I don't think they were quite surprised at the way he played because he showed glimpses of that in high school.
When you look at Urban Meyer's approach to this quarterback situation, obviously has these 3 guys, but he's got some highly rated freshmen coming in next year. He's not afraid to just have a bunch of quarterbacks in that room.
No. If you're going to, it's a good problem to have, I guess. I don't know what happens when they all get here. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people speaking up in that room, and now they have a new quarterbacks coach in Tim Beck who's kind of have to sort through it all. But it's an interesting problem. It's a good one for Ohio State to have, and I certainly don't envy Urban Meyer for having to make a decision.
Bill, how much of a loss will Tom Herman be as the offensive coordinator?
I'm not sure. I think, Ed Warner steps in as the play caller, and he has experience doing that before. He had a good run as a play caller at Kansas. And the big thing that Urban talked about was that it's not Tom Herman's offense. Tom Herman kind of came in and put his touch on it a bit by adding the tempo and some things like that, but it's always been Urban's offense. And that's not going to change, really, no matter who the offensive coordinator is. So there might be maybe some bumps in transition with Ed Warner coming in and calling the plays now. Now Tim Beck coming in and being a co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. But I don't see a huge drop-off in what the offense looks like and how it operates, because it's not like this is a mid-season thing where they got to adjust on the fly. They've got from now until next August to get things figured out, and they have Ed Warner in there who's familiar with all the players already.
Bill, it seems like Ohio State, you would think they're going to open next season as the #1 team in the country. A lot of people will probably pick them to repeat. They all kind of danced around that question, but you could kind of see it in their answers that would be the expectation next season. Do you think this team can handle that, starting the season probably at #1, probably having to run the table to get back to the national championship? Can they do that?
Yeah, I think they can handle it. Urban Meyer, he's done it before. He's had teams, he's won championships and then come back with teams with high expectations and then won a championship again. I know there was a year in between, but it's not like Florida was bad the year after they won their first national title. So I think Urban Meyer is the kind of coach who's the right guy to handle a situation like that. It will be interesting to see how the players react to sort of, I guess, having the target on their back. I know that they'll probably talk about that in a sort of a cliche, but they will be a marked team. And teams like TCU and Baylor and Alabama will be back, Oregon will be back. Those teams will all be gunning for them.
Bill, when it comes to Urban Meyer, there was some talk after the game and the next day about him possibly making the leap to the NFL. Maybe that is the next step for a guy like Urban Meyer. Number one, based on the time that you've spent around Urban, do you get the sense that he'll be tempted to try the NFL? And number two, do you think he can have success at that level?
I'll answer the second question first. I think he probably could have success if he wanted to go there, but I just don't see that happening. I haven't spent as much time around Urban as, say, a guy like Doug or Ari has, but from the little time that I spent around him, he seems to me like he's all in on the college game, and I just can't see him leaving. If the NFL can call him with more money, it's not like Ohio State doesn't have the resources to pony up the cash to keep him there. And I think he really loves the psychological aspect of getting guys ready to play at the college level.
With Urban Meyer, this is why Ohio State hired him, to win national championships, to turn Ohio State kind of into an SEC team in the North. Can he continue to do what he's done? Can he continue to bring in top 10 recruiting classes and essentially just dominate everyone in the Big Ten on the recruiting front and then on the field as well?
Yeah, I think so. That's part of what Ari and I are doing with this trip, where we're going around the South and then seeing how Ohio State is now viewed. And we were just at a school north of Dallas talking to a coach there, and he said, Ohio State's always had a national brand, and that was never going to change, and it's certainly amplified a bit with Urban Meyer. But now that they have a national championship and Urban can kind of hang his hat on that and sell what he's doing even more, I don't see any way that the recruiting slips or suffers at all, and I'm sure it'll pick up, and they can probably get a foot in the door in some places they haven't been able to get a foot in the door before and expand that recruiting base a bit.
All right, Bill Landis, part of our Ohio State team, currently traveling around with Ari Wasserman on a J.T. Barrett field trip. Good luck, Bill. Keep Ari in line.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, so Urban Meyer, of course. The NFL question, I think, is really interesting because on the one hand, we're seeing coaches kind of embrace staying in college a little bit. Nick Saban, of course, went to the Dolphins for a little while, came back, and he hasn't really shown real interest in going back to the NFL. Jim Harbaugh is back at the college level, and he had a ton of success in the NFL. Guys seem to be figuring out that if you go to a college like a Michigan or an Ohio State or Alabama, you can get paid a lot of money, and you're not in the pressure situation of the NFL where you have to win right now.
And Dan, it seems like some of these college coaches, sometimes they leave for the NFL because they don't want to deal with recruiting, they don't want to deal with boosters and things along those lines. There are things that come with being a college coach that simply don't come with being in the NFL. But it seems like Urban Meyer loves those things.
Yeah.
The day after the national championship win, he was out there recruiting again. And I think he loves taking these young kids and developing them, motivating them, turning them into something. And you lose that if you go to the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the pressure at the college level is intense.
Yeah.
But at the NFL,
Well, I'll say this, Dan. Man, if Urban Meyer ever says, yeah, you know what, I will try the NFL, he makes the leap like Chip Kelly did, and I'm running an NFL team, I'm never going to be, but if I was somebody that was running an NFL team, I would strongly consider firing whoever my head coach was, unless he was a top 5 head coach in the NFL, or maybe a top 10 NFL head coach. I would strongly consider firing that dude for Urban Meyer. He just wins.
and not to start anything, but let's not forget what we just talked about. If the Browns go 6-10, 7-9 again, Jimmy Haslam. What if Marvin Lewis loses again early in the playoffs?
Dan, just honestly right now, if Urban said, I'll leave for the NFL tomorrow, I'm firing Mike Pettin immediately. Would you not?
I can't disagree with
For a guy that you think has the potential to be one of the best coaches in the NFL. I can't see that guy failing at any level.
We'll see what happens a year from now.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, there could be, you never know. There's always openings with the Browns. Maybe the Bengals decide to make a move, a couple Ohio pro teams.
Yeah.
All right, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the Cavaliers and bring in Joe Vardon, who covers LeBron James and the Cavaliers for us. Joe, how are you?
Well, fellas, I'm doing just fine. My good friend and colleague, Chris Haynes, and I are currently traveling the 405 on our way to Cavs shoot-around here. So if you hear any swearing, crashing, just, general malaise in the background, it would be because of L.A. traffic.
Yeah, you guys could be sitting there till about 2 o'clock before you end up getting to shoot around. All right, a lot of things swirling around this basketball team, Joe. I mean, LeBron coming back was supposed to kind of fix everything, and he looked like the LeBron of old. But unfortunately, now we've got Shovegate. We've got these reports coming out about Kevin Love and discord with David Blatt. Just so much swirling around this team right now, on top of the losing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really par for the course. This season has been one crazy storyline after another. Reports about LeBron, reports about Blatt, reports about Love. I'm sure Kyrie's next. Who knows what that will be. If there was ever such a thing as a must-win game on Game 40, tonight would be it for the Cavs. Playing against the Lakers, Kobe might not be out there. I mean, they're playing against the coach that Dan Gilbert fired. They need to come up with one tonight, for sure.
It's funny that you mentioned Dan Gilbert firing. There's a long list of guys that the Cavs could be playing against, of coaches that Dan Gilbert has fired. But Joe, when it comes to this team, you mentioned all the issues that are surrounding them. What needs to happen for them to turn this thing around, and can something happen for them to turn it around?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are a couple of different things that could happen. And let's talk about the thing that I think most people hope happens, which is that this team, as it's currently constructed, with all current personnel involved, decides that they want to play. Because, all the guys they have on this team, there's way too much talent, way too much to be whatever they are, one game under 500. That's outrageous. That's their record, and they could simply decide that enough is enough and play the way we have seen them play at times this year. So that could fix it on its own. Now, if they have just simply decided that they will not play for this coach, then, at some point a move would have to be made, and I think you would probably see them begin to play as they played earlier this year. So it's really, one way or another, the team just has to decide to get back to doing what it was doing earlier, and, that they can be as good as anyone in the East. I still believe that.
Joe, if they do decide that LeBron can't play for David Blatt, this team can't play for David Blatt, is that a good thing that they would move on from David Blatt, or is that just putting the power right back in the hands of the players and giving the players ultimately what they want? Isn't that a dangerous game to play?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a dangerous game, but what other choice do you have? You know that your window to win with LeBron is not that big. It's not like 1 year, but it's 3 years, maybe 4. Math tells you that. Science tells you that. He's getting older. He had a tough year this year in terms of his health, and, he's going to be slowing down, presumably, even more so as we move along. So, they don't have time to just allow this thing to fester beyond really this season or really even all the way through this season. There has to be that turnaround that Blatt and Griffin and everyone had said would come once LeBron returned and these trades were made. I mean, you have to see it right away, or they're just, what other choice do they have?
Joe, you mentioned what other choice do they have, but did David Griffin kind of paint himself into a corner before that Dallas game when he went on that rant about David Blatt is the Cavs coach? There is no narrative that David Blatt's job is in jeopardy. A lot of people have speculated that that was a message for the team, more so than the media and fans. Did David Griffin kind of get himself stuck?
No, Dan, that's actually it's a great point, and it's a great question, and it's actually something that is hotly debated privately amongst those of us around the team. Is Griffin? Did he put himself on the line with those comments, or was he speaking on behalf of Dan Gilbert? I'm in the camp who says that basically Gilbert put him out there to say that, and that he was, following marching orders. And when the axe falls on Blatt, if that's what's going to happen, that Griffin will be okay. If you go back through and listen to what was said at the time it was said, and sort of what we all know to be true about LeBron's feelings to the contrary, I cannot believe beyond any stretch that Griffin was acting on his own there.
Joe, the LeBron that we all saw the other night, the one that was tomahawking dunks in the half court, 33 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, is that a sign of things to come, do you think?
Yeah, I do, Chris, I really do. And it wasn't, it was the tomahawking, it was like the beating his man with his first step.
Yep.
That play in the first quarter, his first basket back, I can't remember who was guarding him, but whoever it was, that play was over after LeBron's first step. The guy had no chance. LeBron went right to the rim, and then just almost for show, wrapped himself around the rim for a reverse dunk. It was awesome. And then, if you think about the other plays, he's splitting defenders and going right to the rim and dunking the ball. I mean, we may have seen that like one other time this year, and he did it 3 or 4 times in a single game. So, yeah, I think we're going to see more of that as we go forward.
Joe, the Cavs, of course, made that run late against Phoenix, but, again, it was kind of the same old thing, just poor defense. And, even LeBron looked energized on the defensive end, but it still wasn't enough, and he was victimized by a couple of plays as well in that fourth quarter. Can this team fix this defense? Is it on the individuals? Is it on the coaching staff? What can they do?
Yeah, Dan, I've been thinking about that too, because it's one of the things they and we have been talking about all year. Like all year, that's been the discussion all year. Well, can they fix the defense? Can they get back to playing the kind of championship defense you need to play? And I'm wondering how much of it is understanding the scheme and how much of it is just effort. And I'm leaning more towards the effort side because these guys are just, they're giving up wide open shots. They're giving up shots in the lane, and those things don't appear to be because someone missed an assignment or someone didn't switch or someone didn't do this or that. It's just like they didn't get there in time, and that has to change. And I'm not sure how. I think it all gets back to what we were talking about earlier. They have to decide to do this.
All right, Joe, the Cavs are one of the most disappointing teams in the NBA. They've got the 15th best record in the NBA. They're 19-20, and we all understand that there are a lot of issues with this team, and you've kind of outlined what those issues are. But if you were to say, fill in this blank for me, blank is the person most responsible for the Cavs being 19-20 at this point. How would you fill in that blank?
Wow. Gosh, if I would have known you to throwing a fastball like that, I don't know if I would have come on today. Boy, the single person most responsible for this. Well,
Joe stumped.
I mean, you'd have to say. I mean, if I guess you would have to say LeBron, like, and in part because I mean they were 18 and 11 before he missed his time, and then now they are what they are. So his back and knee, I mean, basically account for that. So I guess you would have to say that, but it's not. It's the answer would be more nuanced. LeBron has had some issues beyond his health that he needs to fix, and for a while he fixed them. Mm-hmm. So there's that. I mean, the coach, it's been a nightmare. Mm-hmm. At least it appears that way. I mean, the roster was poorly constructed, and they knew that coming in. So that seems like that has been changed a little bit. We'll see. I mean, some of the supporting cast have really struggled. They're not getting anything out of Mike Miller right now. Kevin Love has been non-existent at times in the fourth quarter. That's a problem. So, there's all sorts of issues. And, Chris, you said it. I mean, by far one of the most disappointing teams. Through 39 games. And, we'll see if it turns around. It has to.
All right, Joe, good luck getting to shoot around. Thanks for the time.
All right. Thanks, man. Yep, thanks, guys.
All right, Joe Vardon joining us on Sports Insider. Thanks to him. Our thanks to Bill Landis for coming on and talking Ohio State. Mary Kay Cabot, of course, always talking Browns with us. And we will be back with you next Thursday at 11:30 with another edition of Sports Insider. For Chris Fedor, I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks for watching.